Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today it is time to talk about the books that I finished in June during Pride Month, and it pains me very much to say it, but Pride Month was my worst reading month of the year so far. So yeah, let's get into it. And before I get into the stats, which I will actually already pull up right now, I actually do have to amend my May wrap-up a little bit. I uploaded my May wrap-up, or I filmed my May wrap-up early because I was leaving for Morocco, and I was like, I'm not gonna finish a book anymore in May. However, I then finished a book on the plane, so let me just very quickly talk about it. I read L'Insomniac by Ben something Jaloum, I think. Who is a Moroccan author who I think now lives in France, possibly in exile, or at least he left for France for exile at some point because he was part of student revolts, and he is now one of the most famous Moroccan or Moroccan heritage authors that exist. And so I read L'Insomniac, or The Insomniac. And this book is very interesting because I went into it thinking it was like a not psychic thriller. What's it called? Psychological thriller. That's what I wanted to say. I went into it thinking it was a psychological thriller. However, it is quite comedic. It follows our main character, who is an insomniac, so he can't sleep. However, after he kills his mother, he finds out that when he kills people, he sleeps like a baby, and so he starts killing people. He starts by killing people who are terminally ill, and then he finds out that the worse the person was in their life, whom he kills, the longer he can sleep, the more sleep credit he gets from them. And so he looks for worse and worse people to kill, and it's written with a lot of humor in a very joking manner. I overall pretty much enjoyed it. I also enjoyed the writing. I read the German translation. However, there were also some elements of it that I didn't particularly enjoy that much, especially when it came to more like sexual stuff, because when he kills one person, he suddenly gets like not sleep points, but like libido points, and he gets really horny. And I just don't like sex written by non-queer men, I have found. Yeah, or like sex when written through a male gaze. So yeah, didn't enjoy those parts. Thought it was a really interesting book, even though it was very different obviously from what I expected. So yeah, but now we can move on to my June stats. So let's talk stats. In June, I read a total of 7 books and almost 3,000 pages, 2,950-ish pages, so like close enough. The moods that I had were adventurous, funny, tense, mysterious, reflective, emotional, and dark. In terms of pace, 5 of the books I read were judged as medium-paced and 2 were judged as slow-paced by Storygraph readers. Then page number, I had 14%, so 1 book that was over 500 pages, then 2 books under 300 pages, and the rest, so 4 books, were between 300 and 500 pages. I only read fiction in June. Then in terms of genres, all books were LGBTQIA. I had 4 fantasy, 2 romance, and then 1 each of dystopian, science fiction, mystery, literary, historical, and contemporary. Obviously, some books fall into multiple genres. Formats, I read 1 book digitally and the rest was physically in print. Then I had 2 books I read in German and 5 books that I read in English, and my average rating was 3.43 stars. That's what I meant with this was my worst reading month so far this year. I had 1 2.5 star, 1 3 star, 2 3.5 star, 2 3.75 stars, and 1 4 star. And then in terms of, you know, my diversity stats, I guess, I had all books that were queer books. I only finished queer books in June. Then I had, I think, 2 books that were either by BIPOC, no, 3 books that were either by BIPOC authors or included BIPOC characters. 4 books, sorry. It's kind of hard because some of them had multiple side character BIPOC characters, but I wouldn't say that they were like main side characters even. So it's like between 3 and 4 books. And then in terms of mental health and disability, my brain won't let me right now. 1, 2 maybe? Yeah, I think 2 books with mental health and no books with disability. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the books that I read. And let's start as always with my lowest rating because I didn't have any rereads. I still haven't finished my reread of Queens of Innislea. So let's start with my lowest rating, which was my buddy read for my book club, which is of Queens, Witches and Valkyries. And that book club is all about reading adult fantasy books written by women or genderqueer folks. In July, by the way, we're reading The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons, which I already read this month, but we'll get to that later on. So, the buddy read for June was Voyage of the Damned by Frances White, and I hate that I once again really didn't like this because I got it in an Illumicrate again, and it seems to be a trend with Illumicrate that unless I already know the author and the book, most of the books tend to be misses for me currently, and then there's a few hits every now and again. This is a standalone and it's a debut fantasy, and it's kind of a, what's it called, closed circle murder mystery fantasy type thing. Basically, you have this country thing, and this country has 12 provinces, and each of the provinces has its own duke or heir, and whoever the heir is has like a specific power, and they all have their own little power. And now that the newest heir to one of the dukedoms, princedoms, I forgot what it's called, was found, all of them have to go onto the ship, and they have to travel to this mountain where they have to now be confirmed as the new dukes of this country, whatever. And on the first day when they're on the ship, the emperor's heir is murdered. And then more people start dying. And everyone's like, oh shit, someone's killing us all off. We need to find out who is doing that. And our main character is, what was his name? D. And D has his own little secret as he's trying to find out who the murderer is. And that is that he doesn't have the power that all of his other compatriots have. So he's technically not the heir of his dukedom thing. Province, that's what it's called, right. So, why did I hate this? First of all, it already didn't start out well because this is written in present tense first person. Like, I don't even know what I like less, multiple POVs, first person perspective or present tense first person. I cannot tell. I hate present tense first person. It takes me out of the story instantly because I just like, it interrupts my suspension of disbelief and my ability to imagine what is happening in the story. I hate present tense first person. It's terrible. Second thing is I hate D. D is not a likable character to me. He's like silly and he's trying to make everyone hate him, and he's like also quirky. He's like, I hate him. There's like also like D is fat, and I've seen reviews that really appreciated the representation of a fat character and how D was portrayed. I've also seen other people saying that the portrayal of D is fatphobic. To be honest, I don't know enough about the subtleties of, I haven't read enough into the subtleties of like writing about fat people and representing fat people to judge that. So I just wanted to mention that so that you're aware in case you want to pick it up. But anyway, I hated Dee's voice read like a 12-year-old character. Like, this book, legitimately, when I started reading it, I was like, is this middle grade? Like, not even YA or crossover YA, straight up middle grade, because Dee's voice was so immature, like so incredibly immature. I hated him. And then there was like, the mystery wasn't really a mystery. I saw some of the twists coming. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the world building. Like, it wasn't what other people said, that they felt like the world building was too whimsical, because the world building is very whimsical. However, for me, it felt that because it was whimsical, the author felt like they didn't have to put a lot of thought into it. And so while it was whimsical in parts, it didn't feel coherent to me. I was just annoyed, and the only reason I didn't DNF this story was because it's an Illumicrate book. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I couldn't stand it. Moving on. So the next one I have is a German one, and that's Schreib den Namen deiner Mutter by Evan I always want to say Tempest. It's Tempest. This is literary fiction, and I picked it up in Leipzig in March because I saw the author speak about the book and it sounded really interesting. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I just noticed once again that German literary fiction is not for me. First of all, let me tell you what this is about. This is about Alex, and Alex is supposed to write an essay for an essay collection about mothers and about relationships to mothers. And because of that, Alex returns to their hometown for the first time in years. Also because there's, I think, a funeral there. And when they're kind of confronted with their mother again, and it's kind of the tumultuous relationship, but also Alex discovering things about themselves, etc. Now, I gave this 3 stars because this was one of those books where I didn't necessarily enjoy it, but not because it was bad, but because I just once again realized that German literary fiction just isn't for me. Because a lot of German literary fiction has this very specific voice. It's one of those things where it's just really funny for me when people make passive main characters white storytelling versus non-white storytelling thing, because in German literary fiction, 99% of the times the main characters are incredibly passive, which I usually don't mind if there's a lot of character exploration and, like, you know, you can have an interesting character with the character still being very passive. However, for some reason with German literary fiction, the author's struggling doing that for me. It just feels not very explorative. It just kind of feels like it's meandering along, and like there's nothing really happening, but not in a way where I enjoy it. So that's why I gave this 3 stars, but I'll just move on now already because it's unlikely that any of you will read this book, or can even read this book, because it came out only recently and I don't know if it will ever be translated. So next we have my 3.5 star books. First I have Der Tag des Königs, or Le Jour du Roi by Abdellah Taïa. This is also a Moroccan author, because I read a bunch of Moroccan authors because I was in Morocco. And this author I read this month, or I picked out, because this was the first publicly queer Arabian author. And to this day, according to Wikipedia, this is the only out gay author who's Moroccan. And so I thought I'd read this. Also, this author, I do believe, lives in exile in France as well. And so I wanted to pick up this author because I just wanted to read some queer fiction that wasn't Western-centric. This story is set during the days of Hassan II, who was a Moroccan king in the second half of the 20th century, if I remember correctly. And we follow Omar and Khalid. And Omar loves Khalid. The two of them come from different social worlds. Omar is quite poor. Khalid lives up the hill in a mansion and is quite rich, but they go to the same school. And the two of them are very close to each other. However, the closeness kind of shatters when Khalid is chosen to kiss the hand of the king, and it kind of brings their social differences to the forefront. I thought this was a really interesting book. I thought the writing was very interesting. Again, I read the German translation. However, it was written in like very short sentences. And it has had this really interesting structure where you were never quite sure if the story is told chronologically or not. There were also every now and again, there were like dream sequences, and then the last few chapters, like randomly, we follow a different character once again. However, this book also has this thing about like writing about women or portraying female characters in a way where I'm like, I'm not quite sure if I'm comfortable with that. So that's why I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. However, I think I can recommend this because it's just like, it's a really interesting story. I do think that I missed quite a lot because I'm not like, I did read into Morocco's history a lot more when I was there, because I tend to do that when I travel somewhere. However, I still don't think I read into it enough to fully comprehend this book. Or maybe I'm just assuming that, like, maybe that's just a really mean thing of me to assume automatically if I read books from somewhere else that there must be something that I'm missing. But yeah, to be honest, I also often feel like that when I read American literary fiction or anything that's not Austrian and German literary fiction, to be honest. Okay, so I had to change my battery, but my second 3.5 star book was Santa Olivia by Jacqueline Carey, which is the first book in the Santa Olivia duology. And I just ordered a bunch of more Jacqueline Carey books used, since I have now finished all of her Crucial's Legacy books. I will get to the last one later on, but I did already film a review of that. And yeah, I just picked up the ones that my used bookstore had for cheapest, or my online used bookstore had for cheapest, and then I picked this one up because this one is in fact gay and it follows a lesbian. So this interesting thing about this is I'm not quite sure if it's YA or not. It seems in places to be too dark for YA because there are instances of sexual assault. However, the main character, we follow the main character from like 13-ish to 18 years old. This is set in a town that used to be called, I'm actually not sure if it used to be called Santa Olivia. However, there's been like this, first there was a pandemic, then there was a war, and now there's this town that doesn't really know what's going on outside, Santa Olivia, which is kind of a stronghold, a US Army base or something along those lines. And our main character grows up in this army base, and she is the daughter of an escaped genetic experiment wolf man person. And because of that, she grows up without fear and has to learn to be very careful on her own. And she also grows up stronger than other people. And it's kind of hard to tell you what this story is about concisely, because the inciting incident of the story only happens like halfway through the book, to be honest. I still really enjoyed it though. It was a fast read. I pretty much read it in a single day. It has Jacqueline Carey's very like trademarked almost short chapters. Like seriously, this is 340 pages long. It has 54 chapters. Like the chapters are around 7 pages each. I like our main character, I like the side characters, I like the queerness of it. It was just a really fun read. It's like, it's not as game-changing or anything as the Crucial's Legacy series. It's nothing that I'm gonna gush about forever. However, I really enjoyed it, and I'm probably gonna be picking up book 2 in July. So my 3.75 star books. First, because we just talked about her, let's talk about Jacqueline Carey with Nama's Blessing, which was the last book in the Nama trilogy, which is the 3rd trilogy within the Kushiel's Legacy series. I said I was done with the series. I still have to read Cassiel's Servant though, so I'm not quite done with it. And I just actually won't talk too much about this. This is the trilogy that follows a new main character that's now set a few generations after the first 2 trilogies. The first one follows Phaedra, who is a courtesan spy, and because of that kind of gets entangled in the politics of Terre d'Ange. And within this one we follow, as I said, a new main character who not only is not from Terre d'Ange, but we also follow her. I mean, she's partially from Terre d'Ange, but she didn't grow up there. But we also follow her as she travels through the different countries of the world, and then this last one we follow her as she travels to Terra Nova, which is basically the Americas. So she travels to Central and South America. I really enjoyed it. I have a full review of this series up already, so I will leave the link down below. There were some things in this one where I wasn't quite comfortable with all the portrayals of like the indigenous people of the regions. However, overall, I just love Moiren as a main character. I love how she interacts with different peoples, different cultures, and yeah, I can recommend Jacqueline Carey. She's an amazing, amazing author. And then the other book I gave 3.75 stars, which I also won't talk about too long because I did already film a full review, which I will try to put up by the end of the week, is The Sky on Fire by Jenn Lyons. And this one, as I said, is also my July book club read because it will be published on the 9th of July. Jenn Lyons obviously wrote one of my all-time favorite series. You can see it over here, which is A Chorus of Dragons. This is her new standalone, and in it we follow Anna Roth, who is kidnapped by a bunch of people to steal from a dragon who years and years and years ago tried to have her killed. And the book is exactly as it sounds like. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously. However, it still plays with fantasy tropes in like a really good way. I was a little bit disappointed by parts of it, which is why I gave it only 3.75 stars. However, if you want to know exactly what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy about it, why I only gave it 3.75 stars, then you will have to watch my review once it comes out. I just wanted to say, which I'll link down below. But obviously, I didn't do that yet, so once it comes out, watch my review. The last book I want to talk about is An Education Malice by S.T. Gibson, which is a vampire story and dark academia. However, it's more dark academia vibes than being dark academia in the way of like questioning academia. And this also is kind of being marketed as being close to the story of Carmilla or a Carmilla retelling or anything. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would say it has certain elements that take inspiration from Carmilla, but there's really nothing else but there being a female vampire and there being characters that are named the same as in Carmilla that has anything to do with Carmilla. It has a lot more, it takes a lot more inspiration from The Secret History, and then also I would say a little bit Dark Poet Society. Dead Poet Society. Anyway, in this one we follow Laura, who starts college at St. Perpetua's, and it's kind of like isolated and very ancient, and once there she meets Carmilla and kind of becomes instantly obsessed by her, and she also gets taken under the wing of de La Fontaine, who is the poetry teacher at this college, who also kind of teaches Carmilla. The poetry class is where the two of them meet, and then there's like secrets and vampires and witchery and sorcery and stuff, and yeah, a ton of good stuff. I will not talk about this for too long as well because I do want to film a full review. However, very quickly, I really love the dynamics between the characters. It's also the focal point of the story. I probably would have enjoyed it more if it was more straightforward, that it's like doesn't really have that much to do, or isn't like very similar, very retelling-y of Carmilla. So yeah, kind of be aware of that if that's the main pull that takes you to the story. I still really love it. I love the dynamic between the characters. It is written in two-person POV, first-person perspective, which, as you know, I hate, and I do think it could have been done better. Like, yeah, I didn't mind it, but I also didn't enjoy it. And I would say the plot is mostly there to just serve the characters and serve the dynamics of the characters. But yeah, with that, let's pull first from my country thing. For July, I have Ecuador. I still need to find a book, so if you have any recommendations, tell me. I once again still don't have all countries in there, but it's because they kind of don't fit, so maybe I'll just take the second half of the countries once I have this a bit more empty. But for August, I have Croatia, so that should fit summer, right? I'm sure I'll find something for Croatia somewhere, probably even in the library. And then also, let's pick from my series TBR chart, which I am way worse at actually keeping to, and this one is for July and not for August. And for July, I picked Blackthorn and Grimm by Juliet Marilyn. I will probably actually finish that. So I'm gonna order the third Blackthorn and Grimm, which I think is the Wolf's Den, which I do also have on my fantasy bingo board thing. So yes, but that was enough rambling. So tell me in the comments down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned? And if you have, what were your thoughts on them? If you enjoyed this video and what you think about, give me a thumbs up, and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club, as always, I'll link down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!